My wife cheated while I was traveling for work. I came home early and everything changed. I used to think the sound of my suitcase wheels meant I was doing the right thing. Like, listen to that. That is a man providing. That is a dad making sure his kids have braces money and birthday money and the kind of groceries that do not come in suspiciously small cans. I worked in animal care, not the cute kind where you hold a kitten and everyone claps, the real kind. The kind with early mornings and long drives and contracts that pop up in random parts of the country. A sick herd here. A rescue situation there. A facility needing oversight. Sometimes it was 3 days, sometimes 5, and it was often enough that my car knew the highway better than it knew my driveway. I had a good salary. We lived in a nice state. We had a house that looked like stability from the curb, and I had a wife who used to meet me at the door like my return was a holiday. 12 years married, 2 kids, an older one who could read my face like a weather report, and a younger one who still thought my work was basically a superhero job because it involved animals and uniforms. I thought I was winning at life. I thought I was doing the noble grind. I thought wrong. The first crack did not look like a crack. It looked like a sentence from my older child, casual, like a kid saying the sky is blue. We were at the kitchen counter. I had just put my keys down, and my child said, "Mom had a man over yesterday." I laughed at first because my brain did not want to stand up and stretch. I said, "A man?" Like a superhero, like the mailman, and my child shrugged and said, "He came inside. He and Mom talked in the living room. Then they went to the hallway. Then Mom told me to go to my room." My stomach did that slow drop like an elevator with a bad attitude. I kept my voice light because I did not want to scare anybody. I asked what the man looked like. My child said, "Tall, smelled like the same stuff as Ben." And my brain did that thing where it tries to be reasonable even when reason is late for work. Ben was my childhood friend. Ben was the guy who helped me move a couch. Ben was the guy who once borrowed my lawn mower and returned it clean. Ben was the guy who showed up at our kids' birthdays with practical gifts like he had a secret degree in being a decent uncle. And my child had just casually tossed his name into my kitchen like it was a spoon in a sink. I did not accuse anyone. I did not flip tables. I asked my wife that evening. I tried to sound normal. I said, "Hey, our kid mentioned someone came by. Who was that?" And she did not even blink. She said, "Just an electrician." And she said it like she had rehearsed it in the mirror while brushing her teeth. She added, "The outlet in the hallway has been weird." And I nodded because I had seen that outlet act suspicious. And for a minute I let it go. Because that is what husbands do when they are tired. They accept the electrician story like it is a receipt. But later I walked to that outlet and stared at it like it owed me an explanation. Then I checked it. It worked. It was fine. It was more fine than I was. A few days later my boss called about another trip, a short one. A facility needed an inspection. Some animals needed a transport plan. It was the kind of trip that pays for the nice things and also quietly steals your evenings. I told my wife the schedule. She smiled. She said okay. She did not ask for details, which used to be a sign of trust, but now it felt like a sign of not caring. Ben texted me that same night. Random. "Hey brother, you around this week?" I said I was traveling. He replied with a thumbs up, and I stared at that thumbs up like it was a tiny hand waving goodbye to my sanity. The trip went fine. I did my job. I did the professional thing. I took care of animals. I took care of paperwork. I talked to people who pay invoices and people who forget to lock gates. And I kept telling myself I was being ridiculous, that my kid had misunderstood, that my wife had called an electrician, that Ben smelled like a lot of men because soap is not unique. I told myself all the things a man tells himself when he is trying to protect his family from his own fear. On the last day I called home and told my wife I would be late coming back. I made it sound casual, like I was just managing logistics. She said okay too quickly. She said it like she was already busy, like she was watching the clock and wanted it to go faster. That is when my calm snapped into focus, not rage, just clarity. The kind of clarity that makes you feel cold in the middle of a warm car. I drove home early, hours early. I did not announce it. I did not call again. I told myself I just wanted to surprise the kids. I told myself I wanted to see their faces light up. I told myself a lot of things. The truth was I needed to know, because not knowing is a slow poison. And I had been sipping it for days. When I pulled into my street, the house looked normal. The lawn looked normal. The windows looked normal. The world was doing its best impression of peaceful. And then I saw a car that should not have been there. Ben's car, right there, parked like it belonged, parked like it was confident. And I sat behind the wheel and my hands went numb. I remember noticing something stupid, like the way his tires were clean, like he had washed the car before coming over, which felt like an extra insult, like he dressed up for the betrayal. I walked up to my own front door, and I did not slam it. I did not kick it. I opened it like I was entering a meeting. The house smelled like candles, not our usual cheap vanilla. Something fancier, something planned. And I heard laughter, her laugh, softer than usual, like she was trying to be someone else. I moved toward the hallway. And that is when I saw what I never wanted to see. Not graphic, not anything YouTube would clutch its pearls at. Just enough. Their closeness, their panic, the look on Ben's face like he had been caught stealing from a friend. Because that is exactly what he was doing. My wife went white. Ben went red, and I felt this strange calm settle into my bones, like my body said, okay, now we know. Now we stop guessing. I said my wife's name once, not loud, just firm. She tried to speak. Nothing came out. Ben started to say, listen, and I held my hand up, not threatening, just stopping him, like you stop someone from stepping into traffic. I said, pack a bag, and I said it like a sentence that had already been decided. My wife looked at me like she expected me to explode, and I did not, because my kids were in the house somewhere, and I refused to make this moment another thing they would need therapy for. I looked at Ben and I said, get out. He hesitated, like he wanted to defend himself with a speech, and I gave him a look that said, if you say one word, you will regret it for the rest of your life. So he left without the speech, without the hero monologue, just a man walking out fast, and I watched him go, and I felt something in me detach, like a thread snapping. My wife packed quickly, too quickly, like she had practiced. And that detail hit me harder than the scene itself, because practice means planning. She did not look for the kids. She did not ask where they were. She did not say, let me explain. She just grabbed her things and moved toward the door, and right before she left she said, I was lonely, and I almost laughed because the line was so predictable it should come with a coupon. I said, you were not lonely. You were comfortable, and now you are leaving. She left, and the door clicked shut, and the quiet afterward was so loud I could hear my own heartbeat like it was trying to file a complaint. I found my kids. They were in their rooms. The older one looked at my face and knew. The younger one asked if Mom went to the store. I said we were going to Grandma and Grandpa's for a little while. I packed bags with hands that did not feel like mine. I drove them to my parents' house. My parents did not ask questions in front of the kids. They just opened the door and gathered them in like a safe harbor. My mom's eyes met mine, and her face changed. She knew too, because mothers have a sixth sense for disaster. I stayed long enough to tuck the kids in. I told them I loved them. I told them none of this was their fault. I said it calmly because I needed them to borrow my calm. Then I drove back to my empty house. That night I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the outlet in the hallway, the perfectly fine outlet, and I realized the electrician story was not just a lie, it was a test. She wanted to see if I would swallow it, and I had, because I was busy being a provider. And then my phone buzzed, a message from Ben. Just 2 words, I can explain, and I stared at it until the screen went dark. Then I turned the phone face down like it was something dirty, and I thought, explain what? Explain how a man can grow up with you, eat at your table, smile at your kids, and still decide your life is a buffet. I did not sleep. I did not cry yet either, not because I am made of stone, but because my brain was already planning, because heartbreak is one thing and logistics are another, and I have always been good at logistics. The next morning I called a lawyer, and while the phone rang I looked around the house and noticed small details I had ignored, a second coffee mug in the sink, 2 wine glasses put away too neatly, the candle that was not ours, and I realized this was not a one-time mistake. This was a pattern wearing a costume, and I promised myself something right there at my own table. I promised I would not beg. I would not chase. I would not collapse. I would handle it. And in the end, I would be the one standing. The lawyer's office smelled like coffee and paper and the kind of calm that costs money. Her name was Diane. She looked like someone who could cut through nonsense with a single eyebrow lift. I told her everything in a straight line. The trips, the electrician story, Ben's car in my driveway like he was paying rent. Diane listened without making the sympathetic face people think you want. She asked practical questions, dates, texts, joint accounts, passwords, property, childcare routines, and I answered like I was back on the job doing an inspection, because if I did not treat my own life like a case file I was going to crumble. Diane said something I did not expect. She said, your wife leaving the children behind matters. It shows priorities, and I nodded and felt a sharp sting of gratitude for the simple truth. Not because I wanted to punish their mother, but because my kids deserved stability. Diane told me to document everything, save messages, avoid fights, keep communication in writing. She said I should not talk to Ben at all, and when she said his name her tone turned colder, like she already disliked him, which felt oddly comforting, like someone else was finally annoyed on my behalf. When I got home there was a new message from Ben, longer this time. He wrote like he was applying for forgiveness. I never meant for it to happen. She said you were never around. She said you were done with the marriage. She said she felt invisible. I am sorry. I am your brother. I stared at the words, and the part that hit me was not the apology, it was the line about being my brother, because brothers do not do that. Brothers do not call betrayal a misunderstanding. I did not reply. I took screenshots. I forwarded them to Diane like she was collecting trading cards for the court. Then I blocked him. The block felt good. Like slamming a door without the drama of slamming a door. My wife finally texted too. She did not ask about the kids. She asked about the house. She said, I need some things. I said, We can arrange a time with my dad present, because my dad has the gentle energy of a calm mountain and also the ability to make grown adults feel like they just tracked mud onto his carpet. She replied with a single word, fine. She used to call me babe. Now I was apparently an obstacle with the phone plan. The next few days were a blur of school drop-offs, work calls, and me learning how many small tasks my wife had done that I never noticed, not because I did not appreciate her, but because marriage is a machine, and when one part breaks you suddenly hear every rattle. I packed lunches, I found missing shoes, I signed permission slips, I drove to my parents' house every night to check in. My mom started sending home food in containers like I was a college student again. My kids were quiet in the car. The older one watched me like I might disappear too. The younger one kept asking when mom was coming back, and every time the question landed, I felt like I had swallowed a rock. I kept my voice steady and said, I do not know yet, but you are safe, and I love you, and I am here. And I meant it so hard it almost hurt. On the fourth day, my older child said something that made my blood run cold again. We were brushing teeth. My child said, Dad, that man came more than once. I stopped, toothbrush in my hand. I asked how many times. My child shrugged, like kids do when they do not track adult disasters the way adults do, and said, a lot, and then added, sometimes he brought donuts. I laughed one sharp laugh because of course he did. Of course the guy bringing chaos also brought donuts. The universe loves a detail like that. I asked if mom told them to keep it secret. My child hesitated, then nodded, and said, she said it was none of your business. I thanked my child for telling me. I said they did the right thing. Then I stood in the bathroom for a moment staring at my own face, and I realized this was not just betrayal. It was recruitment. She had tried to recruit my kid into her lie, and something in me turned from heartbreak to steel. That night Diane called. She said she had filed emergency custody paperwork based on abandonment and stability. She said my wife might try to claim I was absent because of travel, and I told her the travel was work, documented, for the family. Diane said that is the difference. She said the court cares about consistency and safety. She said we are going to keep this clean. She also said something that sounded small but mattered. She said, do not leave the house. Stay put. Keep your routines. If she tries to paint you as unstable, we show you are the stable one. I looked around my empty living room and thought, I can do stable. I have been stable since I was old enough to pay bills. The next morning I got a call from my boss asking if I could take another trip, and for the first time in years I said no. My boss went quiet, then said, everything okay? I told him the clean version, family emergency. My boss surprised me. He said, take what you need, we will cover, and I felt gratitude again. The kind that sneaks up when life is ugly, but someone shows up with decency. I stayed local. I did my work from home where I could. I coordinated teams, I did calls, I visited a nearby site only when my parents could watch the kids. I became a man with calendars and backup plans and a new respect for single parents everywhere. The day my wife came to pick up her things, my dad arrived early. He walked through my house like he was assessing storm damage. He did not say much. He just stood near the doorway with his arms folded. My wife pulled in and got out alone. No Ben in the car, which I noticed, not because it mattered, but because she used to travel with confidence when she had an audience. Now she walked like the ground might argue with her. She looked at me and said, can we talk? I said, we can talk with my dad here. She rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. Then she stepped inside and immediately started grabbing things, not sentimental things, useful things, like chargers and paperwork and a box of documents from the desk drawer. That made my brain light up, because people do not grab documents unless they are planning something. I said, what are you taking? She snapped, my stuff? I said, the kids' birth certificates are not your stuff. She froze for half a second, then tried to laugh. I am their mother, I said, and I am their father, and those stay here. My dad shifted his weight like a bouncer at a quiet club, and my wife put the documents back with a smile that looked painted on. Then she said, the line she had probably been saving, you were never here. You left me alone all the time. I looked at her and felt calm again, like the calm had moved in and changed the locks. I said, I was working, I was earning, I was building a life for us. She said, you cared more about animals than about me. And I almost said, at least the animals do not lie. But I did not want my kids to hear me become bitter, so I kept it simple. I said, I cared about this family, and you decided to burn it down. Because you were bored. She flinched at the word bored. Because lonely is a story you can cry to, bored is a choice you have to own. My wife then did something that surprised me. She said, it was not Ben's idea, it was mine. And for a second I respected the honesty. Then she added, he just listened, like he was a therapist. I stared at her and said, if that is listening, then I have been doing marriage wrong. She huffed, grabbed her bags, and headed out. And right at the door she turned and said, I am not giving up my kids. I said, you already walked out without them. Do not rewrite history now. And she left in a rush, tires crunching gravel like punctuation, commas, not periods. Later that evening Diane texted. She said, court date set. she said. Be ready for her to bring up your travel, she said. Also, I found something interesting. My stomach tightened. I called her immediately, she said. There is a financial irregularity, small at first, then bigger, transfers from your joint account to an account you are not on, and the name on it is not Ben. I sat down hard, because I had expected betrayal. I had not expected math, Diane said. It could be a separate savings, it could be something else. We are subpoenaing records. And in that moment the story in my head shifted, because cheating was one thing, but planning was another. And the more I replayed the past year, the more I saw little gaps where my wife had been oddly careful, oddly private, oddly interested in my travel schedule, like she did not just want me gone, she needed me gone. That night my older child asked if mom was mad at us, and my heart twisted. I said no, absolutely not. I said adults make mistakes, and sometimes they try to blame everyone else because it is easier than looking in the mirror. My child asked if we were going to be okay. I said yes, and I meant it. Then my phone buzzed again. A new number, a text. It was Ben. Because of course he found a way. It said, please do not dig into the money. You do not understand. And right then I knew. This was bigger than a bad choice in my hallway. This was a whole secret life with receipts. I did not reply to Ben. Silence is louder when someone is guilty. Instead, I forwarded the message to Diane and put my phone down like it might bite me. The idea that money was involved kept looping in my head. Because affairs are messy, but money requires planning, spreadsheets, intention. And my wife had never been the spreadsheet type unless it was important. The next day Diane called again, and her voice had that careful tone professionals use when the truth is about to get uncomfortable. She said the account had been opened almost a year ago. Around the same time my travel increased, small amounts at first, then larger, always right after I got paid. I felt stupid for not noticing, but then I remembered how much I trusted her, how I thought trust was a virtue and not a blindfold. Diane said something else. She said the withdrawals lined up with deposits Ben had made from his own account. I closed my eyes and laughed once, not because it was funny, but because my life had apparently turned into a bad crime show without the background music. I asked Diane what this meant. She said it meant intent. She said it meant coordination. She said it also meant the court would not look kindly on it, especially combined with leaving the kids. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat in my car in the driveway for a long time before going inside, because my house felt like evidence now, not a home, and I needed a minute to remember it was still mine. That evening my wife finally asked about the kids. Her message was short and stiff. Can I see them this weekend? I stared at it and felt tired instead of angry. I told her we could discuss supervised time after the hearing. She responded with a long paragraph about her rights and her feelings. I stopped reading halfway through because feelings do not override actions. I sent the message to Diane and put the phone away again. I was learning a new skill, restraint. Ben tried calling that night. Twice, I let it ring. The second time he left a voicemail. His voice sounded smaller than I remembered. He said he was scared. He said he thought they were in love. He said he never meant to hurt the kids. I deleted it after saving a copy, because nothing he said could make that sentence okay. The court date came faster than I expected. My parents watched the kids. My mom hugged me like she was trying to transfer strength through bone structure. In the courtroom, my wife sat across from me. She looked different, less certain. Ben was not there, which told me everything I needed to know about loyalty. When it was her turn to speak, she said I was absent. She said my trips made her feel like a single parent. She said she made mistakes, plural, like that softened it. When it was my turn, my lawyer laid out the timeline calmly. The trips, the income, the stability, the abandonment, the accounts. The judge listened, asked questions, took notes, and at one point looked directly at my wife and asked why she left the children behind if she felt so alone. My wife did not have an answer that landed. The ruling was temporary but clear: primary custody with me, supervised visits pending further review, financial investigation ongoing. I did not celebrate. I just breathed, because breathing felt like a win. Outside the courtroom, my wife tried to talk to me. She said Ben had promised things. She said she thought I would never know. She said she was sorry. I told her I believed she was sorry. She got caught. Not sorry she did it. And then I walked away. My legs were shaking, but my back was straight. That night, I picked up my kids and took them for ice cream, even though it was a school night. My older one smiled for real for the first time in weeks. My younger one got chocolate everywhere and laughed like nothing had changed. And I realized something important. My life had not ended. It had narrowed. And in that narrowing, I could see exactly who mattered. Later, when the kids were asleep, my phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unknown number. It said, Ben is gone. He took the money and disappeared. And I stared at the screen knowing this story still had teeth. The message about Ben disappearing sat in my head like a loose nail. Not painful yet, but impossible to ignore. Diane confirmed it the next morning. She said his accounts were drained and his phone disconnected. She said my wife claimed she did not know where he went, which was interesting because she had trusted him with money and secrets, but apparently not directions. The court was not amused, neither was I. But I felt something unexpected, relief, because a man who runs leaves answers behind whether he means to or not. My wife started calling more after that, not about the kids' schedules or school updates, but about me, about us. She said she felt manipulated. She said Ben had promised a future. I almost admired the confidence it took to say that to the man she had replaced. I kept my replies short and factual. Kids are fine. Talk to my lawyer. Stick to the process. Every message I did not send felt like progress. At home, I built routines like armor, breakfast at the same time, homework at the table, silly jokes before bed. My older child started helping with dishes without being asked. My younger one started drawing pictures of just the three of us. I taped one to the fridge and looked at it every morning like a mission statement. Then the twist I did not expect came quietly. A call from Ben's sister. We had grown up around each other too. She sounded exhausted. She said Ben had been lying to everyone, not just me. He had debts, promises, stories layered on stories. She apologized even though she did not owe me anything. She said she thought I should know he had planned to leave town for months, money or no money. My wife had not been his escape plan. She had been his bridge, and bridges are meant to be crossed and left behind. When I hung up, I felt strangely calm, because the mystery was gone. And what remained was simple. My wife did not cheat because I traveled. She cheated because she chose someone who reflected the parts of herself she did not want to face. And Ben did not betray me because I failed him. He did it because that is who he was when things got real. That night, I stood in my quiet kitchen and realized something important. I was not rebuilding from ruins. I was clearing out clutter, and the space left behind felt honest, not lonely. Honest. The final hearing came without drama, which felt strange considering how much drama had brought us there. The judge spoke clearly. Custody stayed with me. Financial responsibility was divided with consequences attached. My wife nodded a lot like agreement might rewrite the past. When it was over, she cried in the hallway. Not loud, not performative, just quiet. And for the first time, I felt no urge to fix it, because some emotions are not yours to manage. On the drive home, I thought about the man I had been before all this. The one who thought sacrifice automatically earned loyalty. The one who believed being gone for the right reasons protected you from the wrong outcomes. I did not hate that man, but I was done being him. I wanted to be present in ways that did not require a suitcase. My wife moved into a small apartment across town. She saw the kids on schedule. She tried to be cheerful, sometimes too cheerful, like she was auditioning for forgiveness. The kids adjusted in their own ways. The older one asked fewer questions and made sharper observations. The younger one accepted the new normal like kids do. With surprising grace, I learned to measure success differently, not by income or travel miles, but by how often we laughed at dinner. One evening, my boss called again and offered me a new role, less travel, more coordination, a slight pay cut. I said yes before fear could talk me out of it. When I told my kids, they cheered like I had won a prize, and maybe I had. Later that night, I sat on the porch alone and realized the quiet no longer scared me. It felt earned. I had not lost my family. I had protected it. And the man who once thought dignity meant enduring silently finally understood that dignity also means choosing yourself. Time did what it always does when you stop fighting it. It moved forward without asking permission. Weeks turned into months. The house stopped feeling like a crime scene and started feeling like ours again. I repainted the hallway, not because it needed it, but because I wanted to erase the memory of that outlet and everything around it. The kids helped choose the color. It was terrible, but it was theirs, so I loved it. My wife tried again one afternoon, not with anger or excuses, but nostalgia. She sent a photo from years ago, all of us smiling. I looked at it carefully before replying. I told her it was a good memory, but it belonged to people who no longer existed in the same way. She did not answer after that, and for once silence felt respectful. Something else changed too. People started telling me things. Friends admitted they had noticed shifts in her behavior, her secrecy, Ben's sudden presence. No one said anything before, because no one wanted to be wrong. I did not blame them, but I filed it away as a reminder. Comfort keeps secrets. Courage exposes them. One night, my older child asked if I missed Mom. I said I missed the idea of who we thought we were, but not the reality of who we became. My child nodded like that made sense, which told me I was doing something right. I started sleeping better, eating better, laughing easier, not because life had become perfect, but because it was honest. I know. Longer felt like I was racing against my own absence. I was here, fully, and that counted. Sometimes I still thought about Ben, not with anger, but with distance, like thinking about a road you are glad you did not keep driving on. Whatever happened to him was no longer my concern. My responsibility ended where my integrity began. I stood in the kitchen one evening watching my kids argue over dessert, smiling, and I realized the suspense I had lived in was gone. The waiting, the not knowing, the fear, all replaced by something steadier, certainty. The last thing to change was me. Not in a dramatic way, No big speech in the mirror, just small quiet decisions stacking up. I stopped explaining myself to people who were committed to misunderstanding me. I stopped carrying guilt that was never mine. I stopped confusing patience with permission, and somewhere in that process I started to feel lighter. Not because I forgot what happened, but because I understood it. One afternoon my wife thanked me, not for forgiveness, but for consistency. She said the kids felt safe with me, and I nodded, because that was always the goal. Not winning, not revenge, just safety. When she left I noticed I did not feel shaken. I felt complete, like a chapter had closed without slamming. The kids and I built new traditions, movie nights with bad popcorn, weekend breakfasts that took too long, road trips that stayed within driving distance. My suitcase gathered dust in the closet, and I did not miss it. Work became something I did, not something that pulled me away, and for the first time in years I felt present in my own life. Sometimes people ask if I would do anything differently, if I would travel less, trust less, love less, and the answer is no. I would just listen sooner, not to suspicion, but to myself, because the warning signs were there, quiet, polite, easy to ignore, but clear in hindsight. I did not lose a wife. I gained clarity. I did not lose a friend. I lost a lie, and I did not lose my family. I became the one who held it together when it mattered most. That is the part one carry forward. Head high, shoulders steady, dignity intact, not bitter, not broken, just awake.